Is faith about believing or following? Now, of course, it's both. One without the other is not true faith. It's not what Jesus has invited us to. But which one is easiest, to believe or to follow? Now, surely it's to believe. It doesn't really require anything from us other than to change what we think about who God and who Jesus is. On one level, you can believe in Jesus and it not impact who you are or how you live your life. Now, I did that for many years. I think on some level, I've always believed in Jesus. I've always believed that Jesus was God. I've always believed in the existence of God, as far back as I can remember, that is. Now, that's not because I was brought up in a family that had faith. I wasn't. My mum did start going to a very traditional church when I was about 7, and my brother and I went along for a while. We even sang it in the choir. But I left when I was 9 because, well, it was really boring and I wanted to play football on a Sunday instead. My brief spell in church as a kid didn't impact my faith. I'm pretty sure I believed before I went, and I continued to believe after I stopped going. But this belief didn't impact what I did or how I lived. And it wasn't until I was 17 that my belief in Jesus turned into action. See, I'd started going back to the church that I went to as a kid, and I met up again with some of the friends that I'd made there when I was younger. And I liked hanging out with them, and I started to think more about faith. But again, it didn't impact what I did. My attitude, my actions, and my values all stayed the same. And if I'm really honest, a bunch of them were not very helpful or healthy. But then I felt a nudge, a prod from God to do something about it. And to be honest, it was more like a slap. Now, I know that sounds strange. No, God didn't literally slap me, but the internal conviction was so strong that I knew God was on my case about this. I was confronted with a choice to follow Jesus or not. I knew that believing wasn't enough. Jesus was inviting me, just as he invites all of us, to follow him, to allow this belief to impact what we think, what we say, and what we do. And I wasn't sure. I didn't want to let go of some of the stuff that was part of my life. I was standing in a marquee in Butlins, of all places, wrestling with this internal battle. Am I going to follow Jesus or not? And I knew that to say yes would impact my entire life. I would never be the same again. And I wasn't. Following Jesus is a big deal. It's not just something you do, it's something that impacts how you see yourself and how you see the world around you. Following Jesus should impact every aspect of your life, your finances, your relationships, your priorities. It should impact what you watch and what you consume. It should shape your attitude, your actions, and your values. What you think, what you say, and what you do should be influenced by your decision to follow Jesus. I'm labouring this point because far too often we settle for just believing and we don't actually start following. So this series is all about having a faith that is willing to follow Jesus, a faith that takes belief and puts legs and hands on it, a faith that is disruptive. Your faith should disrupt your life. It should change your trajectory and your eternity. So we're taking a closer look at some of the more challenging things that Jesus said. And these can often be things that we gloss over or we try to forget. They can be the things that we try to theorize or theologize, but don't actually apply. In this message, we're going to look at something that Jesus expects of his followers that is going to stretch you to the limit. Now, there's a guy called Luke who recorded it all for us. Luke was a doctor and he wanted to investigate these claims about Jesus. So he spoke to eyewitnesses in order to create an orderly account of the things that Jesus said and the things that he did. And Luke captures a sermon that Jesus preached on a mountain in Galilee. It's often referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. It's full of faith in action. There's some really practical and challenging things that Jesus asks of his followers, especially this bit. Jesus said, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you'd have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. I mean, wow, there is so much in what Jesus has just said. And if you're a Jesus follower, do you agree with this? Jesus starts the section off by saying, but to you who are listening. He's speaking to a crowd, but here he changes tack a bit. And I picture him looking in the eyes of the people closest to him, the people who were actually following him. And perhaps there were those folks on the fringes, the people who observed from a distance, the people who saw something different in Jesus. He's speaking to the people who listen to live out what he says, to the people who follow him, and he shows them what it looks like to follow. Jesus lists a whole bunch of stuff, which, if we're honest, we say, are you having a laugh? Jesus, do you really expect me to give to anyone who asks me for something? Do you really expect me to love my enemies? The people who are out to get me? And the simple answer is yes. There's a habit amongst Jesus' followers to take these words, just as we do with some of the other challenging things that Jesus has said, and we try and find loopholes or workarounds. Lots has been written on these words, and lots of what has been written has tried to work out, what Jesus really meant. So we contextualize and we look to the original Greek words that Luke used so that we can come out with what Jesus really meant. And it's funny that what we end up with after this filtering process is often a lot less than what Jesus originally said. Now, the problem with dissecting passages like this is that we drill down into the examples that Jesus used in order to help us figure out what these words might mean for us today. But when we do this, we have to resist the temptation to find a way out. We have to resist the urge to find a secret back door that gives us a valid excuse for why we don't have to give the guy who's just hit us a free shot on the other side. Focusing on the individual examples often results in us missing the point. See, Jesus isn't giving us an exhaustive list of what we should and what we shouldn't do. He's painting a vivid picture of what a vital part of following him looks like. And these challenging words are all about one thing. It's something that's synonymous with following Jesus. It's something that's at the heart of who we are called to be and what we're called to do. It's something that is perfectly modeled for us through Jesus himself. It's love. When you take a look at what Jesus is actually saying, you can see that he's calling us to be people of love. And then he uses an extreme example to help us understand what extreme love is all about. And when we think about love, we tend to think about the people that we love, who tend to be the people who love us back. So the things we do for love, or in the name of love, are done with these people in mind. And just think about someone in this category for a moment. Picture them. What are the things that you would do for them? If they were in need, what would you do? The great late theologian Meatloaf was correct when he said, I would do anything for love. There are lots of great stories and films and songs written about love, and they inspire us and they move us as we witness the lengths that people go to for the people they love. It's great, but it's not love. Well, not at least to the fullness that Jesus is talking about. Let's take a closer look at what Jesus has said. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, What credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Now, Jesus' point is that everybody loves the people who love them. There isn't actually anything overtly special about that. Now, love itself is special, but the fact that we love the people who love us isn't. It's like saying, wow, look at him, he's got a hand. A hand is an amazing piece of engineering, and it takes the brightest minds to be able to replicate it as a robotic version. The hand itself is amazing, but the fact that most people have one is not. Love in any form is amazing. The selfless act that is others focused, that seeks to give, to bless, to help and encourage the person in front of you is amazing. It's something that goes against the natural order. There's no room for sentimentality in the survival of the fittest. To give of yourself for the benefit of others goes against this. But love is also completely natural because we all experience it. And that's why there isn't anything that's special in us loving the people who love us in return. It's the norm. And I know I've just contradicted myself. The reason why love is so common is because it's given to us. John, one of Jesus' closest friends, told us that love comes from God because God is love. Every act of love is there because of God. We love because we've got the fingerprint of our Creator all over us. His DNA is in us. We're created in His image. I came across a video on YouTube recently of Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky talking about love. And he shared the story of a man asking another man why he was eating fish. It's because I love fish, the man replied. Oh, you love fish? Is that why you took the fish out of the water, killed it, gutted it, skinned it, cooked it, and ate it? Don't tell me you love fish. You love yourself. You see, so much of what we call love is fish love. It's about what we get or what we receive. Now, this isn't love. Well, not the love that Jesus is talking about anyway. It's not the love that Jesus demonstrated to us. This fish love that Rabbi Tversky talks about is transactional love. We love because of what we receive. When we stop receiving, we stop loving. Now, Jesus is talking about something entirely different. He's talking about transformational love. This type of love goes beyond emotions. It goes beyond what it gets in return. Transactional love gives to the people it loves, whereas transformational love loves the people to whom it gives. The model for this love is Jesus himself. It's how he lived and it's what he did. His birth, his life, his death, his resurrection, and even his ascension. Now, that's the technical word we use to describe his return to heaven. All of this is an act of selfless love given to us, irrespective of what we give to him in return. His endless patience and mercy are an act of transformational love. His willingness to see us as the people we were created to be, to see us through the potential he has placed within us, rather than as we currently are, is an act of transformational love. His willingness to be tortured and humiliated and executed in one of the most horrific ways imaginable was an act of transformational love. And that through this act of love, Jesus was able to somehow take away the consequence of our rebellion, our selfishness, and our sin. He was able to take it upon to himself, to bear the weight of it himself, so that we can be free from it. Now, this is transformational love. And so Jesus stands in front of the people who would listen to him, and he stands in front of his followers, and he says, if you follow me, I want you to live like me. I want you to love like me. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about the way everybody else loves. I'm talking about something that goes far deeper. I'm talking about love that is able to love even in the face of opposition, a love that is able to love even the people who are out to get you. Now, this is the standard that Jesus sets for his followers. And it's one that will disrupt your life. To love like this, we have to constantly ask ourselves, what does love require of me? When that difficult co-worker or that irritating neighbour is making life more difficult, ask, what does love require of me? And then act. When that person has said something mean to you or behind your back, and you feel the urge to respond, when you feel the temptation to say something cutting so you can get even, that's when you ask yourself this question: what does love require of me? And after asking it, act on it. Now, if you're anything like me, you can probably see that what Jesus is saying, and on one level, you probably agree. You're willing to step into this kind of love. You want to be able to love like this. But then that part of you speaks up and says, how? This all sounds like a great idea, but how am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to have the strength, the composure, the discipline, and the compassion to love like this? I struggle to do this to the person who's driving too slow in front of me, let alone someone who's actively trying to hurt me. You see, love comes from God because God is love. We love the people we love because of God, whether we realize it or not. If there was no God, there would be no love. But there is love because there is God. You love your kids and your family and your friends because God has placed that capacity to love within you. And so you can love your enemies and the people who hurt you or dislike you. You can love the people who irritate you or who get in your way because God has placed that capacity to love within you. The starting point is a willingness to follow Jesus into it, a willingness to love the people who don't love you back. So ask yourself, what does love require of me? Identify the answer to that question, but then ask another. Help me to love like this. Ask God to help you, and He will. But you have to be willing to walk into it. You have to be willing to act. You have to be willing to love. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you have faith in Jesus, then He invites you to love like this. He expects you to love like this. If you want to discover what deep really looks like when it comes to faith, well, start loving like this. Whilst Jesus expects you to do this, He doesn't expect you to do it by yourself or in your own strength. He sets us the standard, and then He gives us the source of inspiration and motivation. He gives us the power and the ability to attain to this standard by placing His Spirit, the same Spirit that helped Him do all that He did. He places this Spirit within us to help us. So who is the person that comes to mind for you right now? Who is the person you feel prompted, nudged, or challenged to love, even though they seem to not love you back? How can you make that first move this week? Love like this because you've been loved like this. Nobody said it would be easy, but it will be worth it.